because of petrol, because of food, because of access to clean drinking water. The United States is worried about Taiwan because of its semiconductor manufacture. So the world still revolves around resources, minerals, rare earths, and manufactured commodities. Is that a criticism? Does that disagree with what you're saying? Or
no,
you presumably have a rebuttal to it?
Well, of course. I mean, it always did. Feudalism. I mean, think of the great clashes between the medieval forces, medieval powers. They were clashing over resources, over surplus distribution, over ideologies, over a reach of empire. That was happening well before capitalism was established. So nothing has changed. And feudalism, capitalism, and now techno-feudalism in that regard. But if you're going to understand, for instance, you mentioned Taiwan. Why is Taiwan an issue now? If you ask them, United States government, they'll tell you, because, Beijing wants to gobble it up. It always wanted to gobble it up. I mean, the United States has never recognized Taiwan because it recognized, as part of the deal between Nixon and Mao, that China has a claim to Taiwan. So what is new exactly? In my book, I try to explain what I think is new. And it's the rise of cloud capital, the shift from capitalism to techno-feudalism. Because if you think about it, after 1971, when the gold standard died and the dollar was no longer exchangeable with gold, the United States has built its power on a remarkable model of a world system whereby the United States has a huge trade surplus, which acts as a vacuum cleaner, sucking into its territory the products of Chinese capitalists, well, Chinese labor to be precise, of German, of Dutch, of Italian, Japanese, of course. And how does it pay with that? For that, with IOUs, called dollars, because it prints them. And why do the Chinese, the Japanese, the German capitalists accept those IOUs, the dollars? Because they use it to take it back to Wall Street and to invest in real estate, in bonds, effectively financing the American government. So that's the model since the mid-1970s. And that whole model is predicated upon what? On the monopoly of the payment system of the dollar and the dollar payment system, right? What has happened in the last 10, 15 years, which I tried to map out in techno-feudalism, is that the Chinese are the only alternative locus in which cloud capital emerged. Europe has no cloud capital of its own. We don't have a Google, we don't have a Facebook, we don't have a Tesla, we don't have anything. Zero. Europe, and that includes Britain. The Chinese have.
We have OnlyFans. That's it.
So if you take an app like WeChat, or if you take the digital currency that is being tested, massively tested, 135 million accounts by the Central Bank of China, they are developing the technology to have a payment system which is denominated not in dollars, but in yuan. This rise of Chinese techno-feudalism, if you want a Chinese cloud fief, in contradiction with the American cloud fief, explains why Taiwan is an issue.
Yeah, I think it's a really original explanation for rising geopolitical tensions, which I've not seen elsewhere. I'm sure some people have sort of hinted at it. But the idea that what's really upsetting the United States is the emergence of big tech conglomerates that can compete with their own ones. And obviously, the most visible example of that is the geopolitical furore around TikTok, which you touch upon in the book. And I think it is true to an extent that clearly the world is diverging, particularly as we move into a world of AI, diverging into these two spheres of influence. There was a great paper a few years ago by PricewaterhouseCoopers saying that AI was going to add around $17 trillion to the global economy by 2030, 2035. And almost all of this is going to China and the United States. None of it is going to South America or Africa.
Or Europe.
Or Europe, exactly. So I find that a really original argument. But to step back a bit, because I think you just mentioned what you referred to as the global minotaur in the book and what happens after 1971, which explains where we are now and even things like US-China relations. So let's go back to 1971. We have the disadoption of the gold standard by Nixon. Why did that happen? And what has it meant in the ensuing sort of period of 50 plus years?